When I watch a movie here, it often has Japanese subtitles that I can't turn off. That was obvious in the days of videotape, but even on streaming, there's still often only a choice of Jimakuban, the subtitled version, or Fukikaeban, the dubbed version. I'm always going to choose the option with the original audio, even if it comes with subtitles that aren't useful to me, and since I can't turn them off, I figure I might as well read them. And sometimes I'm shocked by what I find. Some of the translations are good, some are bad, and some are unbelievably bad. I should say before I get into this that I understand that translation is difficult. Translating for a specialized field requires knowledge of that field, and literary translation requires understanding of nuance of expression, character, and culture. In addition, a translator may be working under a tight deadline, or space constraints, or with specific, even unusual requests from a boss or a client. You and I won't always agree on what's a good translation or a bad one, or which mistakes are forgivable and which aren't. But the one I want to talk about today is absolutely a special case. At first, it looked like a simple and clear error, but the more I thought about it, the deeper it went. First, some background. The movie in question is Captain Horatio Hornblower, first released in 1951 and then the following year in Japan. If you're searching for this movie in Japanese, it's Kancho Horatio, literally Captain Horatio, with no last name. Where did his last name go? Why would they just cut it off? Not only that, but it's usually pretty strange, with some exceptions of course, in English to put someone's job title or military rank alongside just their first name. I mean, that was the whole joke of the title of Captain Ron. You remember Captain Ron? Anyway, Hornblower is a typical Gregory Peck role. He's a man with superhuman intelligence, skill, morality, and self-control. The script is conscious of this, enough to poke fun at it. A member of the crew even says it outright.
Even him. Hornblower? He ain't human. Hornblower? He ain't human.
Of course, from the character's point of view, it's sarcastic. It's a joke, or at least an overstatement. But for anyone who's seen To Kill a Mockingbird or Marooned, you know it's serious. The story begins, as the opening narration explains, aboard a British Navy ship on a secret mission in 1807. Captain Hornblower himself is the only one who knows the mission and the destination, and so he navigates their route halfway around the globe without any assistance from his subordinates. When they're getting close, he tells the bridge officers to watch out for a certain landmark. It's the first land they've seen in months, and so when they spot it straight ahead of them, they express a mix of surprise bordering on disbelief and respect bordering on infatuation with their captain.
I hadn't been here to see that. If any man had told me, I'd have called him a liar.
Hit it right on the nose after 10,000 miles at sea.
Did you catch all that on your first try? If so, great. For everyone else, let's listen again. I'll put up a blank for each word in the line. Now it's easy to see how many words there are. Here's the first line again.
I hadn't been here to see that.
You might catch see and hear, and if you can't understand any other words, you might wonder if it's see, or see, or see, and hear, or hear. See and hear might go together as a set, and they're sailing, so it might be see. If your brain is stuck in katakana mode, You might even think it's she. If you can understand the other words around them, it will be easier to judge. If you're having trouble understanding spoken English, it's helpful to think about the difference between strong and weak words and sounds. Each word, if it's long enough, has strong parts and weak parts. Like captain. The first half, cap, is said stronger. It's not captain, it's captain. Then, on top of that, in a sentence, words with important information are stronger. In a sentence, the strong sounds drive the rhythm of speech, and many changes happen in the weak parts as sounds break down. Here, he says to see that. See is a key word, so it's clear. That is also quite clear. T is really two. But if I tell you it's two, it could still be two, or two, or two. Two is a number. A number would be important information, so it would be said clearly. Two also gives us information, telling us that something is the same as something else. But two is usually just part of the system. It usually gives us information that we could guess without being told. So it's softened. Put these parts together, and we can see that see is the verb to see. Once you reach a certain level of experience, your brain will judge things like this automatically. But for now, you might have to consciously think about it.
I hadn't been here to see that. I hadn't been here to see that. I hadn't been here to see that.
He starts with if, although it's hard to hear. And the verb looks like it's in past perfect form, but he isn't talking about the past. You can call it a subjunctive or an irrealis, but what's important is that he's talking about a situation that isn't real. Imagining a situation that isn't real to compare it to the situation that is. Saying it like this is a way for him to show how strong his feeling of surprise is. He believes it only because he saw it himself. Without witnessing it directly, he would not believe it. You might think it's inconvenient or confusing that this imaginary type of phrase looks the same as past. Maybe it is, but you'll get used to it. The if should also connect this to another idea, but instead of finishing the thought, he starts again.
If any man had told me, I'd have called him a liar. If any man had told me, I'd have called him a liar.
These are the key words, the strong words that he says clearly. As for the weak words, in this sentence, 3 of them start with H. H is a weak sound anyway, and when it's at the beginning of a weak word, it sometimes disappears completely.
If any man had told me, I'd have called him a liar. If any man had told me, I'd have called him a liar. If any man had told me, I'd have called him a liar.
If someone, anyone, told him this story, he would say, "No way, that's bull. That's a lie. You're lying. You're a liar." But that's not the situation. He is seeing it, so he has no choice but to believe it. Let's take a look at the subtitles.
I hadn't been here to see that. If any man had told me, I'd have called him a liar.
ありえないことだ. It's not possible. 本当のこととは思えん. I can't believe it's true. It doesn't seem like they tried to translate the lines directly, or capture the tone or the character's personality. But the overall meaning is pretty much the same, so it passes the minimum level test. The other officer adds,
Hit it right on the nose after 10,000 miles at sea. Hit it right on the nose after 10,000 miles at sea. Hit it right on the nose after 10,000 miles at sea.
He's amazed at the accuracy. There are other phrases in English that make us imagine a small object, a small target, and the precision required to hit it, like on the button, or on the dot, or stop on a dime. Sometimes it's a point in space, sometimes time, or another number. In this case, it's a pinpoint location 2 oceans away. They've traveled an incredible distance. He says 10,000 miles. Here's where the subtitles surprised me.
Hit it right on the nose after 10,000 miles at sea.
目の前にある. It's right in front of your eyes.
This is not crazy, but doesn't it seem closer to the first man's "been here to see that"? Did they want to say eyes just because he said nose? By the way, I wrote your eyes because I felt like he was saying believe it, after the other guy said it was hard to believe. But in Japanese, the person is not stated explicitly. You could translate it as our eyes or my eyes, if that seems to match the context. I thought your eyes matched. Do you agree?
After 10,000 miles at sea.
So let me say that I like hateni as a translation of after. That sounds cool. But of course what jumped out at me was the number 1,600. 1 mile is equal to 1.6 kilometers. So 10,000 miles is equal to 16,000 kilometers. The number is missing a digit. No doubt about it. But there's another problem. If I have a US map and I measure a distance on it in miles, but then I want to tell you that distance, I will convert it, like I just did, multiplying by 1.6. But that's for a map of the land. This is the ocean. So it seems likely that when he says miles, he means nautical miles. I would assume so. And so the number shouldn't be 16,000, but 18,000 kilometers. So I'm calling that the second simultaneous mistake. The third may just be my opinion, but really, why convert it at all? Why not just make the subtitle Ichiman Mairu? Keeping it as miles would have avoided any mistake in calculation. More importantly, it would maintain the feeling of the original. I'm guessing that kilometers were chosen to make it more accessible to a modern Japanese audience. But this is a period drama. The things that might make it less accessible are the same things that give it its flavor. If someone is choosing to watch a story that's set in a different time period, are they then going to complain because it felt too much like the period? Why did they convert it? Was it the translator's choice, or an order they were given? Did they think Japanese viewers would panic if he said 10,000 miles? Is it that uncomfortable? If they insisted on converting it to a unit that was used in Japan, what would fit the period? I don't think the British Navy used kilometers in 1807, or the Japanese Navy for that matter. I was going to suggest kairi, but was surprised to find that that unit wasn't used until 1872, according to the dictionary. So it doesn't factually fit this period, but I feel like it would at least be an improvement over kilometers. I also didn't know, until now, that the official length of the kairi was based on the nautical mile. So 10,000 miles would also be 10,000 kairi. No calculation necessary. The historical ri was introduced from China, but the kairi was part of Meiji-era westernization. Do you know what unit was used to measure distance over water in Japan before 1872? Please tell me if you do. I have one more complaint. Mr. Bush is really excited.
Right on the nose, and may my liver rot.
I don't think it's reasonable to expect an exact measurement from him in this moment. Anyway, the captain is the only one who really knows how far they've sailed. So his statement of 10,000 is, at best, an approximation. If his statement is approximate, it sounds silly to translate it into an exact value. Plus, it's 10,000. In modern English, myriad means too many to count, but the word it comes from meant 10,000. Japanese speakers should be able to relate too. Shindabansho doesn't mean there are literally exactly 10,000 things in the world. The Great Wall, Bandi no Chojo, isn't really 10,000 li long, is it? The point is, it's probably more important to use some huge number than to use a weirdly specific number. It would be better just to say very far, a long distance, or even to use the time, 7 months, as they say in another scene. But maybe some viewers can't let it go at that. Knowing the accurate distance can become kind of an obsession. That's not really the movie's fault, but I know how you feel. In the movie, the ship leaves Plymouth, England, and sails south and west. The opening tells us they travel around Cape Horn and enter the Pacific Ocean. The internet told me that a voyage from Plymouth to a port near Cape Horn covers 7,000 miles. After that, they travel north to an unknown and possibly fictional destination. So 10,000 miles seems reasonable, based on the information in the story. Without knowing how far they travel in the Pacific, isn't it just as reasonable to say they travel 11,000 miles? But we choose 10,000 because it sounds better. But 11,000 nautical miles is around 20,000 kilometers, so if you had to use kilometers, wouldn't that sound better? The first mistake we talked about, the missing zero, could have been a calculation error by the translator, but it's also possible that they submitted 16,000, and then the movie's distributor made a typo when adding it to the film. Either way, it seems like a simple mistake, and it's just unfortunate that nobody noticed it before it got published. But that raises a question. The movie was released in theaters in Japan in 1952, and I'm watching it on streaming now. In between, it was shown on TV, released on VHS and DVD, and maybe other formats too. At what point, in which release was this mistake made? Could it be that this mistake has been sitting there, with no one either noticing it or caring enough to fix it for more than 70 years? If anyone listening has an older copy of this movie, please tell me what the translation says here. That goes for the dubbed version, too. Regardless, it is a mistake. I think we can all agree on the math, and I hope we can all agree that the line is supposed to mean nautical miles. So, if it was absolutely necessary, for whatever reason, to use kilometers, the correctly converted figure would be 18,000. But I would say that being mathematically correct is less important than maintaining the mood of the scene, and so rounding up to 20,000 would sound more natural in the situation. If it were up to me, I wouldn't want to convert the number at all, and so I would have preferred kairi to kilometers. But in my opinion, the best translation is the one that changes the least, ichiman mairu. It gives the correct information and protects the spirit of the original dialogue. Seems like a win-win. The way I see it, this one line has 4 different mistakes layered on top of each other. It's 4 mistakes in one. A 4-in-1 mistake. A quadruple mistake. A perfect storm of misjudgment and miscalculation.